Hi guys, it's Aoife from Words of Clover and I am here to do the mid-year book freakout tag. So it is a little bit late in the year to be doing this, but I've been watching obviously loads of people doing this because this is like one of the main book tags for this time of year, and I wasn't originally going to do it. I was going to give it a break this year, but I don't know, I just really feel like doing it now. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. I will leave Ellie from Earl Grey Books down below. She was one of the co-creators of this tag. So the first question is the best book you've read so far in 2021. I've had some really great reads in 2021. The first book is Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. I have a whole book review about this book, which I will leave above if you haven't seen it. It is spoiler free, and this book is just absolutely breathtaking. I loved it. It is a historic, kind of like a historical fantasy book set in ancient Ireland. We are following a girl called Sorcha whose father remarries this woman who is a bit of a witch, and then this woman ends up cursing Sorcha and her brothers. Her brothers all turn into swans, and then she actually takes away Sorcha's voice. So Sorcha is now mute. She cannot communicate through her voice with other people, and she ends up having to do this really terrible task, like that's really painful and really time consuming, to save her brothers. But she only has a very limited time period to do these tasks, to try and save her brothers before they become swans forever, before animal instincts overtake them and they're swans for the rest of their lives. So we follow Sorcha from the time she's quite young. She's only about 13 or 14 I think when the curse first takes place, and we kind of see her grow up really solitary. She is alone, and we see these adventures that take upon her, as well as a lot of trauma as well. This book definitely has like a lot of really sad moments, but some really lovely moments and really heartwarming moments as well. And there's this love of nature in the book. There is love of mythology and folklore, a connection with the old tales and old beliefs, especially in Ireland, which I really appreciated. Quite like a chunky book, but I was just so hooked from start to finish, and I just absolutely loved it. So definitely one of my favourite books of the year. And my other favourite book of the year is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This book is just one of the most unusual books I've ever read about. We're following this character called Piranesi who lives in this great big house with endless corridors, and once a week he meets this other person who kind of gives him supplies and talks to him, but we never really know what is going on, and you basically have to just follow along with Piranesi, who is the most beautiful character, one of the most beautiful characters I've ever followed in a book, and someone who's just so heartwarming and he's so endearing, and you follow him a lot. You follow along with him while he's kind of discovering more things about who he is and where he is, and I absolutely loved it. I definitely want to like get my own copy of this book so I can reread it soon, but absolutely loved it. One of my tops of the year. The second question is best sequel I've read in 2021. I actually haven't read that many sequels in 2021. The sequels for me is actually something that's becoming a really big problem. I keep reading a lot of standalones, but also starting a lot of series, and I just haven't been very good with finishing them. So that's definitely something I need to, maybe next year or at the end of this year, really tackle. It was something I tried to tackle at the end of last year, and I made a big list about all the books I needed to carry on with and where I could get them, whether I already had them on my Kindle, whether I could request them from the library. I had requested a few from the library to start me off, and then the libraries were closed for the first like 3 or 4 months of the year, so that really set me back. So yeah, I really need to get back into that project and try and continue with that. But one of the sequels I did read that I really enjoyed was The Reckoning by Jane Casey. This is the second book in her Maeve Kerrigan series, which is a crime series. Maeve is a police detective in London who we're following as she is kind of, trying to solve these different murders and serial killers and crimes. And The Reckoning is basically about, we follow Maeve as she is looking into the killings of these 3 men, and it turns out all of these men were convicted or put on a sex offenders list. So it seems like there's someone out there killing pedophiles or people who they believe are pedophiles, but then the case ends up like evolving into something else, and it turns into something else like completely different from the start of the book, and I really loved that, and I just felt really hooked into these books. I find Maeve as a character just this really great character to follow, and she has her ups and downs in her personal life, and she has a lot of like things going on romantically as well, possibly with a colleague, and I just really liked following along with all of that. These books are really addictive. I just really enjoy them. Can't wait to carry on with the series, and I'm hopefully going to read the third book very soon. Third question is a new release I haven't read yet, but I really want to. To be honest, that's like all of the releases this year. I'm very much behind on my NetGalley list, on my TBR cart. yeah, I'm very behind with all the books I want to read. One of them I did have down for this question was She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This actually only came out this week, and I've actually had it for a few months and I just haven't picked it up yet, because I kept saying, oh, July's ages away, and then suddenly it was July and then it was the publishing date and I still hadn't read this book. But I actually picked this up the other day and I am currently 139 pages in and I'm really enjoying this. So I haven't finished it yet, but I have started it, so that's progress at least. Question number 5 is my biggest disappointment of the year. I had a couple like disappointing books like this year that I found I was expecting to like really love them, and they just tend to be like 3 or 2 stars. One of those for me was Skyward Inn by Elia Whiteley. This is a book that has been compared to Becky Chambers' A Wayfarer series, and while I understand that comparison because it is one of those kind of gentle sci-fi books, I actually don't think they're very like that similar that like they should be compared, because yeah, I just wasn't really invested in this book at all. It's slightly confusing. We are following these characters who are in, I think it's Wales they're in, and they run this inn. One character we're following is human, the other character doesn't seem to be human, and then we're also following the human character's son, who lives a little bit further away with her brother, so his uncle, and we are kind of like finding out why there's an estrangement between the mother and son, and then these strangers are encroaching and on this nearby farm, and it seems like there's some sort of sickness or something creeping up on them, and it could be alien like in form, like space travel and aliens and things, like they're quite normal in this world, but yeah, there's something coming. So yeah, this book just was like, it was actually very short, and I found it to be like, I felt like it was really long, like I felt like it wouldn't end. I just didn't enjoy my reading experience of it. It just didn't connect with me at all, compared to the type of kind of science and the type of space that I have seen in Emma Newman's writing. And while she does write like really nice stories, they're ones again that don't really connect with me, and the books that I have read from hers, or the book I did read from her, is ones that some people have really loved. I just didn't really enjoy it, but I actually do think if you like Emma Newman's writing, you might like Skyward Inn. Question number 6 is my biggest surprise. One of my biggest surprises this year was actually The Wisdom of Tea, which I read during the Asian readathon, and this is a book that I just basically picked up for a non-fiction book by an Asian author. I basically just looked on my library app online, and I was just like looking through to see what books were there and what books I could like pick up straight away, and one of those was The Wisdom of Tea, and it actually had this really beautiful kind of pink and white, like really gorgeous kind of cover, and that's kind of what first drew me to it. And then obviously it's just about the ritual and the custom of drinking tea in Japan, and how it's like a ceremony and it's something that people study for years and years. And we're following, this is, I think was originally written back in the 80s, and we are following the character who, when she's a young girl, I think she's only in her late teens, early 20s, she ends up taking these lessons to learn how to like drink tea and how to serve tea, and we learn along with her what like this ceremony means, what the different customs mean. All like there's so many different ways that the tea can be drank, different things around the tea room, how it changes like with the season, what type of messages you want to bring into your life. Like it's just so interesting, and the book was like, it was just really relaxing. There's a little bit of humour in the narration of the book as well, and yeah, I just found it so interesting. Question number 7 is favourite author, either debut or new to me, and both of these books I think are debut authors, but both of them were also new to me, and I read both of them during the Irish Readathon. They're both Irish authors. So the first one is Shobhri Madhavan, and I read The Tainted by her during the Irish Readathon. This is a book set in 1920 in a small town in India, and it basically follows the story of these Irish soldiers who were in the English army that were based in this small town in India at the time. And during the time Ireland was going through like a war of independence against England, and the Irish soldiers found out about some of the atrocities that had been done by British mercenaries to like their family members, to people they knew, just to innocent Irish civilians. And they kind of were like, why are we fighting for the crown when the crown is doing this to our people? This kind of shows what happened with that. And then we're also following years down the line, and we're actually following a character who is related to like the soldiers from that time, and we're finding a little bit more about what happened. So there's kind of like a past and present storyline going on. But I just loved this. I loved finding out more about like Anglo Irish and Anglo English people in India, and the connection between India and Ireland like that I never knew about before, and how there was like this whole bunch of people who were born and like grew up in India that thought of themselves as Irish. And yeah, it was just really interesting to follow. I think Showvery, she like wrote Irish people, like she describes herself as I think a Paddy Indian, because she has like lived in Ireland for a very, very long time. She's raised her family in Ireland, I believe, and she just writes Irish people, like she knows Irish people, she is Irish, she just got the humour, she got the like the way like Irish people talk to each other, she got it down so well, and I just really enjoyed this book, and I just cannot wait for anything else she brings out, because I will definitely be picking it up. She'll probably be an author by author for me from now on. And then another book that I really enjoyed and another author was The Henna Wars by Adiba Jargadar. This is also Adiba's debut novel. This is a YA novel based around this girl called Nishat, who comes out as lesbian, and she is struggling with like her family's reaction to her news, and she also is dealing with a crush in school with this girl called Flavia, and they also are in this kind of competition in school with each other as well around like a small business. And Nishat is doing henna, which is something that she's really like passionate about. It's something that she learned from her grandmother, like there's family ties there. Then Flavia ends up doing henna as well, even though it's kind of like cultural appropriation on her part, and there's like some really like difficult but meaningful conversations around what that means, and how you can't just like kind of take someone else's culture, and you know, respecting other people's culture as well. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this book. I think it was really strongly written. The YA characters were very, very believable. One of my favourite things in this was the relationship between Nishat and her sister, who were like best friends. It was just really lovely to read. And Adiba does have another book out at the moment called Hani and Ishu's Guide to Fake Dating, and it's one I do really need to pick up, and she's a couple of books coming out in the next few years, all of which sound brilliant. So yeah, definitely will be picking her up in the future. Number 8 is newest fictional crush, Red in Daughter of the Forest, who is this kind of English soldier that is actually not really a soldier. He's kind of like a soldier, like warrior kind of guy in Daughter of the Forest, who looks after Sorka when he finds her. I just really loved how that all played out, and I just thought his patience at times and the way he showed his love and the respect as well, yeah, it was all just lovely. Like he was definitely just like this, like, you know, gruff, beardy, like warrior guy who would just like, you know, like give you a big cuddle and like look after you. And yeah, I just really liked it. Number 9 is my newest favourite character. And for me, I only talked about it in my last wrap up, but this is definitely Matthew Shardlake in Dissolution by CJ Sansom, which I just recently read. I will leave my wrap up linked up above if you haven't seen it yet. And this is a character who is a lawyer in like Tudor times in England, and the first book we are following him as he's carrying out orders on behalf of Cromwell during the English Inquisition. I always have a really hard time saying those two words together, English Inquisition. And he is also investigating the murder of like a colleague of his at this like kind of remote monastery. And I just love Matthew so much, or Shardlake as he's more known as. He is just such a cinnamon bun of a person. He like is someone who's very like earnest, wants to do right, is very shrewd, very like intelligent, knows how to get things out of people. And yeah, I just really loved like everything about him, and I just cannot wait to read more books in the series, literally just for him. I just want to read more about him. I want to see how he gets on. I want him to like find someone and like be happy, and you know, just settle down in a nice little like cottage somewhere, like have a family, and yeah, be happily ever after. And that's what I want for him. I don't know if I will get that, but that's what I want. But he's a character that just like warmed my heart, and I just really like him. Question number 10 is book that made you cry. For me, this is Republic of Shame by Keelan Hogan. I talked about this during my Irish Readathon vlog and wrap up and stuff. This is a non-fiction book that looks basically about the mother and baby homes that were set up in Ireland for a very long time. It's basically an investigation into how the women were treated, and Keelan talks to women who were in the home. She talks to survivors of the home. She talks to children who were born in the home, people like who have been looking for either their children or their biological parents for a very long time and can't, because of the absolute like fuck up that was the Catholic Church and how they treated women and like illegitimate children at this time, how none of the records were done properly, legal adoptions, and it's just an infuriating read. She also does like, you know, she interviews nuns, she interviews priests, she gets the point of view of the clergy and how they feel. But there was one particular scene in this where she describes the survivors of one of the Magdalen laundries going to a dinner in the Mansion House in Dublin, and how people like cheered them on from outside, and there were signs basically like welcoming them home, even though some of these women had never left Ireland, but some of them obviously had fled Ireland once they escaped the mother and baby homes because they couldn't stay in Ireland anymore. It was too traumatic, and there was too much like shame and stigma like on them. But there was all these like people welcoming them home and singing songs and clapping and cheering for them, and I can feel myself getting emotional thinking about it. But like, these women were treated so badly by the government and so badly by the Catholic Church, and just this thing around like how these people were treated, and it's just so upsetting to think about. But yeah, that was just such a wonderful emotional moment for me in this book anyway. There were a lot of other like hard-hitting emotional moments as well, but that one for me definitely just like hit me really hard. Like as you can see, like I can't even really talk about it without getting emotional, because just imagining it is just wow. So yeah, really like this book. It's hard to say that you enjoy the book because of what it's about, but yeah, a very good book. 7 is a book that made me happy, and that is Strange Flowers by Donal Ryan. This is one of my 5-star reads of the year, and this is a book that is set in this kind of rural part of Ireland. We're following a family who one day their daughter basically like gets up, goes and gets the bus and completely disappears, and the mum and dad are left behind. They have no idea why their daughter has like got up and disappeared like that, and they're kind of left like really kind of grieving her loss. They don't know whether she's dead or alive, and they kind of just have to like get on with things. And then 5 years later she ends up coming back, and she also brings with her eventually her son, who she had while she was away in London, and also her husband, who happens to be a black man, and probably like the first black man that anyone in this village at the time, it is in the 70s, and probably the first black person a lot of these people ever saw. Getting like welcomed into the village, they become part of the village, and there's just a lot of little things around like the members of this family, particularly the dad and then the husband, and also the bond that like formed between the two of them, and it's just so lovely. And there's just lots of like really nice things in this one, like that just made me smile. It's a very quiet book, like, you know, it's not all happiness. There's like melancholy there's a little bit of sadness, and there's a bit of selfishness from some of the characters as well. But overall, yeah, it's just I just really liked it. It's just one of those books that when I like finished it, I just like had a smile on my face because I just thought it was really nice. Question number 12 is the most beautiful book you've either bought so far this year or received. And one of those books for me is probably Savage Reply by Deirdre Sullivan. I'm pretty sure I got this book this year, or it might have been the end of last year, but I can't remember. Leanne from Leanne Rose actually sent me this book ahead of the Irish Readathon, and I read it during the Irish Readathon, I think. And it is kind of a Children of Lear retelling. And there's just loads of like really gorgeous illustrations in this book. As you can see, it has this gorgeous like hard cover, and one of the things I really liked about this book is at the start of each kind of chapter there are these, and this is actually done in the style of Ogham, which is obviously a very, very ancient language, and I just thought that was so cool and such like an unusual but like amazing thing to put into the book. They're like little poems, so basically they're almost like these poems or like sentences, and they're done in the style of what they would look like if they were written in Ogham. Question number 13, which is the last question, is what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And that is all of them. I need to read all of them. So that is it for the mid-year freakout book tag. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and if you have any comments or things to say, please leave them down below, and I would love to chat, and I'll see you guys again next time.